us. And then eventually it was just me and Artie. It was like me against Artie. And there was no comparison. I mean, Artie was the guy for that show. I'm a fucking married guy with 2 young kids who's sober. And, you know, Artie's coming in on Monday morning talking about how he had a 3-way with hookers in Vegas and stole his money and he's hungover. And, you know, he's a master storyteller. And he was so great for that show for so long. But then when he got that, Howard said to me, "You're welcome on the show anytime you want to come on." And he was true to it. I went on like 50 times. Every time I was in New York, I would just email, why am I forgetting his name?
Baba Booey.
Yeah. I would email Baba Booey and they'd have me in every single time. It was very nice. It was very welcoming.
Do you ever think about what would have happened if maybe, let's say, Artie has some sort of weird meltdown during this audition and then you get the job and what that would have, do you ever think about that? Like what it would have been like to wake up every morning and be on that show? Or is it, hey, this worked out. People know who I am now from that show and everything worked out anyway without having to be on it?
Well, being on it takes you to a whole other level. I mean, you know, it's really got a very strong cult following. And I don't know, I think it would have overshadowed, like Artie is always going to be known as the guy from the Howard Stern show. And I think I've kind of crawled my way to the middle of this business. And I've been doing it for 30 years, just kind of existing in this really nice space where I make a good living. I get to do what I want creatively. And I'm not at anyone's behest. I'm not anyone's guy. And so I've managed to always have some kind of project going on that keeps me out there a little bit to be able to draw at the comedy clubs. But I think it would have been tough to do that job. I mean, it's a fucking grind. You got to get up early in the morning and you got to be on. And, you know, I'm sure there's office politics that I was never a part of because I was just in and out as a guest. So I think I was relieved when I didn't get it, but it certainly would have been a huge boost to my career.
The way you mentioned that, now that I think about it, it's amazing Artie pulled off 9 years, right? I mean,
was it 9 years? Wow.
Yeah, well, 2002 to 2009. My math might be maybe 8.5. But either way, the fact that he really did show up at least the first 6 years pretty much all the time and then kind of spiraled.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, he's a workman. You know, I mean, he comes from blue-collar stock, so he's like a guy that shows up for work. You know, he may be on heroin, but he shows up. And again, like that show really needed him at that time because everybody was getting older and everybody used to go to strip clubs. Like everybody on the Stern show used to live a wild life and they all got a little bit suburban. And then I think Artie came in and he was this breath of fresh air.
What do you, I mean, have any contact with Artie at all? I ask everyone who joins me here.
Sure. Yeah. I talked to Artie.
How is he?
He's hanging in there. You know, he's sober. He's staying busy. He's starting to go out and do stand-up again. He
is. Well, now, can you tell us a little bit about when where would we see him? He's not promoting this.
I have no idea. I don't know.
But he's healthy because there's this like, oh, where did he go? He's this one little tweet and then he's gone. He was doing a podcast and we lost him. So you're saying he's healthy. You're keeping in touch.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not a reporter. I have no idea. You know, I think he's doing fine.
What about the time you guys did Carnegie Hall and you opened for him, right? Was that one of your bigger times to be on stage and just, I mean, probably like a rock and roll show, right? Because Artie comes and it's not just comedy. It's hey man, let's go. I mean, was that one of the bigger shows for you?
Yeah. I mean, I think the audience, you know, look, as Stern's gotten older, the audience has gotten older. So it's not really that circus environment anymore at those live shows. They're like, you know, they're middle-aged guys from Long Island that drove in, and I think they respected that it was Carnegie Hall. I think everybody sort of felt like, wow, this is a big deal, you know. And but I remember Howard walked in. I can't remember whose set it was during it. Might have been mine. But he walked in while the show was going on, and obviously everyone just stopped and turned, and him and Beth walked down the aisle. And everybody cheered, and he sat down, and then it couldn't have been Art. Maybe it was me. I can't remember. But it was a pretty special night, having been somebody that grew up in New York and, you know, went to Carnegie Hall a million times in my life. And, you know, all the famous albums that have come out of there from, you know, Lenny Bruce to George Carlin and Bob Newhart. You know, to be on that stage was pretty, even though I wasn't the headliner, it still felt pretty special.
You mentioned many times being on the show, and then, you know, no one wants to be in that spotlight and have Howard, but you asked him to write the foreword for your book, right? And it became a bit. It became a long-standing bit. Was that fun to be fodder for Howard? And how hard was it after asking him to go, oh shit, I didn't realize I was going to have to take this much abuse?
Yeah, it was a big ordeal. You know, I think it got played out as a radio bit. It was, I think people enjoyed it. And then, of course, you get the trolls that, you know, get on social media and start talking shit to you because you're giving Howard a hard time. But I think it was all in the spirit of a radio bit. And, you know, I'm still friends with him, and we still text back and forth. And yeah.
You had the other bit with Andy Dick, right? You had to kind of defend yourself after that conversation with Andy, right? I mean, that had to be because he wasn't really excited about what Andy was saying.
Right.
Tell me a little bit about being a roast on roasts. You do a lot of roasts. You did some over there. We talked earlier about not being able to do roast maybe on Comedy Central anymore. I mean, you don't. This culture is not allowing people to do that type of comedy, but I think you just did one. And just talk about that, being part of roast and having to write quick on your feet. Some of those during the Howard show were really hilarious. You took Shuli down. That was very, very funny. Way to bring this way to stop at the. I can't do what you did, but it was great. Tell me about that though. Just writing for roast and being part of those.
Yeah, I just did one for Adam Egan, who's the guy that manages the Comedy Store. He moved out to Austin to take over Joe Rogan's comedy club, which is, you know, I think coming soon. And so we all love that guy. And that is the best roast, is when you know the person and you love them and you can do it in that spirit. Because I did one of the Comedy Central roasts. I did the, who was it? Chevy Chase. And no one liked him. He wasn't friendly, and it was a really negative atmosphere, and it was probably the worst roast in history. It's famously a bad roast. And so when it's somebody that you love, like, you know, roasting Andy Dick, who I absolutely love, and, you know, being able to roast Gary and Howard and everybody, that's a great day. That's when everybody's having fun, and you can kind of feel, it's almost emotional. You really feel people loving each other through insults, you know? I think that people get hurt when they don't know each other because they don't know the boundaries. And so I think that they're still getting a pass, though. I think that the Comedy Central roasts, you know, I'm sure there's people that are complaining about them, but for the most part, Comedy Central is airing them, and they're pretty raw. And I think people get the context of it. And if anyone has a problem with it, they probably shouldn't be watching roasts.
Yeah, exactly. And you wrote for Ellen, famously, someone who is basically getting canceled by her own crew. But at that point, tell me a little bit about those days, because you sort of knew this coming a long, long time ago, that it was not a fun place to work, right? Isn't that pretty much what happened? You decided, I'm just going to not show up. I don't want to work here anymore. Tell me about those days working as a writer and a producer for that show and for her.
Yeah, I have a whole non-disclosure agreement. I'm really not supposed to talk about it. I don't want to get sued over it.
No worries. Do you have a crew of people, like, you know, a comedy crew of guys that you kind of lean on, like a Dave Attell, a Florentine? Who are your guys? Like, who do you sort of just kind of banter stuff with off and kind of have that type of crew? Do you have one of those?
Yeah, no, I wouldn't call it a crew. I kind of do my own thing because I'm married with kids. That's my priority in life. And so I go to the clubs and I'll hang out with, you know, at the store, you hang out with like Joey Diaz and Rogan and, you know, a lot of guys you probably haven't heard of, but that are regular comics there. And then on the phone, I talk to Attell a lot on the phone. I was just in New York last week. And I had dinner with Louis, and then me and Attell hung out for a few hours, and it just felt great to be like, I feel like I have really, really close comic friends in New York since that's where I started. And LA, I've got friends that I've made over the last 20 years, but there's something about those guys you started with that is just more meaningful.
Yeah, and it's kind of a special pact, right? Because I watch a lot of documentaries about comedians. I love the thing on Showtime on the Comedy Store, and there's that group in the 70s, and then the group in the 80s, and then 90s it sort of went away, but it felt like it came back, and then Adam left, as you said. But there is that just special bond between you guys. Not a lot of people know what it's like to just walk up on stage and have the microphone and a light on you for 60 minutes, and you got to go. It's like you can't just walk up there without anything.
Right, right. Yeah, I think it's there's. I guess it's like if you were in the military on some level. They always talk about how people don't understand unless you've like been to war, and this is like a minuscule version of that. But it's something about it's the singular experience, and I guess if you've done it, it doesn't matter if you're somebody who's been doing it for 4 or 5 years or someone who's done it for 30 years. There's still like a brotherhood of it, and especially if there's guys at your level and you can talk about the manager of this club and what the crowds are like at this club, and doing radio in this town, and this guy sucks or this guy's good. We all talk about that stuff.
Who sucks? Besides here.
What's that?
I said, who sucks? Give us... No, I don't want you to have to throw that out there, but yeah, you can if you'd like. You, when we talked, you said you were writing some things. I was just curious if you're working on anything you'd be interested to tell us about, and writing anything, writing for any shows. You're always busy, so is there anything you're working on that you would like to tell us about that we might be interested in as you're doing some writing?
Yeah, I did I sold a show to True TV. It's like a comedy game show, and it's a show that we sold over Zoom, which I was surprised. I wasn't even going to try to pitch over Zoom because who knows what that's like. But then I sold another show over the summer over Zoom. So, I'm getting pilots going, and those are your lottery tickets. Every time you sell a pilot, you've got I don't know what the odds are, 20 to 1 or something of it actually becoming a show on the air. So that's another part of the equation as far as doing stand-up, writing, doing everything is like trying to pitch. And pitching is like stand-up. You just get in the room and you try to make them laugh. And once they're laughing, then you sell them the show because they like you and they feel good. So I think it's a huge advantage as a stand-up in pitching shows, as opposed to, some writers are brilliant writers, but they're kind of nerdy and low energy. And I think they have a hard time, kind of impressing the executives.
It's a lot of grinding, isn't it? It just seems like it's never just things are good. You're always grinding, right? I mean, that's what that...
You're always grinding. Yeah, you're always grinding. You got to fucking, and there's nobody telling you to do it. There's nobody that is, holding you accountable to show up for work. So it's like, I've got this office in Santa Monica. It's 5 minutes from my house. I come here every day and I roll up my sleeves. I take some Adderall and I try to write. And some days it works and some days it doesn't. But if I was writing on a show, I would have to get it done every day. So it's kind of a weird feeling of never being finished when you're working on your own like this.
Like I said, you've